Hello everyone, welcome back to Lab 1. Today we're going to do Objective 8, which has to do with truncate and round with regards to dates. Let's talk about the definitions of truncating and rounding very quickly so we can understand in the context of dates exactly what it is that those mean. Understanding the definitions behind these is absolutely fundamental in understanding how to apply these in a practical situation. Now, for rounding is very simple, right? You round up or down based on the value. So if you think if your date is farther than the halfway point during the year, it would round to the next year. If it was before that half point, it would round down to the beginning of the current year. It's very easy and simple to understand. Truncating, on the other hand, can be a little bit confusing for people who are not familiar with what truncating is. In my opinion, truncating is actually much simpler than rounding because you don't have to ask yourself which direction you're going to be going. Truncating always cuts off whatever portion is incomplete. So for example, if you are rounding to the nearest month, any days since the beginning of the current month will not count in any way. You'll round down to the beginning of the current month. Whereas the year, any dates before the beginning of that year will truncate all the way back to the first. Now, if that didn't make any sense, let's actually take a look now in these functions, and it will become very clear. Let's start off with round. Now, both of these take two parameters. First is the date function. Where are we getting the date from? We're going to use sysdate. We can also use something a little bit later that has to do with like a character literal or a string literal, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So we want to round to the nearest month, which is why we're using mm, right? So today is the 5th of June. So the nearest month, rounding, we would round down because the 5th is actually at the very beginning of the month, right? And we'd see the 1st of June of 2020, right? That makes sense. Now, if we wanted to round today's date to the nearest year, because today's in June, June is the 6th month of 12, that would still be less than half of the entire year. So we would expect this would round to the very beginning of the year, or the 1st of January 2020. And that's exactly what we get, the 1st of January 2020. Now, what about this one? What if we actually put in a specific date here? Now, first of all, this isn't going to work. And the reason why is because in this situation, we actually have to be putting in a date. Now, this is a date, but this is in character form. So what we have to do is first convert this to a date, and then we can input it into the round function. So let's go ahead and convert it to a date. And you could technically also use formatting to say, this is the format that the date character is in, but we're not going to get too crazy and not get into that. So we'll do that, and now we want to round to the nearest year. So the 30th of June, right, that's just before the end of the 6th month. So it rounds down to the 1st of January again. But what happens when we do this? The very next day, the first day of the 7th month of the year, that will round up to January 1st of the following year, 2021. Now that we've got this, let's actually do one more example here. What if we did the 15th? Sorry, let's do the 15th. Whoops, I don't know what I'm doing here. Let's do the 15th of July. It doesn't have to be capitals, but I can be a little bit picky about how I do this. Let's round to the nearest month, right? So the 15th rounds down, right? Rounds down to the 1st. What happens if we change this to the 16th? What would we expect? The 1st of August. Now remember, there are 31 days in July. 16 is more than 15 or 50% of 31. And so that's why it would round up. So now let's go ahead and take a look at truncate, right? So today's date, let's say we wanted to round that to the nearest month. So that rounds down again, right? What it does is it says we have June, because this date is June 6th, right? So it says we have the month of June, but we also have 5 extra days. Well, it gets rid of those extra days and goes immediately to the 1st of June, which would technically mean today has 4 extra days, right? So that's all it does. It just cuts them off, right? We could change this. We could actually, let's do this. Let's do this example. Except let's call this trunk to the nearest month. And even though the 16th is closer to the 31st than it is the 1st, it'll still truncate to the 1st of July, right? And that's because truncate doesn't care how close it is to the next whatever this is, it will always bring it down. So as an incredibly extreme example, we are converting the 31st of December of 2019. We're going to convert that to a date and we want to truncate that. Even though it is only 1 day away from 2020, right? The 1st of January, only 1 day away. We're going to truncate that. Instead, it's going to cut off the entire 364 days to bring it all the way back to the 1st of January of 2019. So this example right here highlights perfectly what truncating does. Now, you might feel like all these examples are a little bit superfluous, and that's okay. If you feel like you understand this, great. But sometimes it's really great to spell this out, make it very, very explicit so that we can understand at an incredibly high level exactly how these functions work. So now that we've done this, that's pretty much it. We'll see you in the next objective.